You're nothing but a lying, cheating snake, I screamed, my voice cracking with rage as I hurled Derek's belongings across the living room. Derek flinched as his framed college diploma shattered against the wall. Lila, please, just let me explain. Explain what? How you've been screwing my supposed best friend behind my back. I spat out the words like venom, my chest heaving. He ran his hands through his disheveled hair. It wasn't like that. Clara and we just connected on a level you and I haven't had in years. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. 4 years of building a life together crumpled into this ugly moment of truth. How could the man I was supposed to marry in 6 months do this to me? Grabbing a framed photo from the mantel, I chucked it at his head. He ducked just in time as it exploded into shards of glass. You bastard! I heard every word when she called earlier. The sneaking around, the lies, the betrayal, it all makes sense now. Derek sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. I'm so sorry, Layla. You've been so wrapped up in your career, always putting work first. Clara understands me in a way you haven't for a long time. My jaw clenched as a lump formed in my throat. So he was going to play that card, blaming me for his infidelity? Don't you dare try to pin this on me, I warned, jabbing a finger towards him. Your selfishness and inability to communicate like an adult caused this, not me. He lifted his head, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I never meant to hurt you, Lila. You have to believe that. A derisive laugh burst from my lips. You stuck your dick in my best friend and carried on a secret affair for God knows how long. How else did you expect me to feel? I grabbed my purse and keys, suddenly unable to be in his presence a second longer. Yanking off my engagement ring, I flung it squarely at his face. He yelped in pain as it struck his cheek, leaving a thin trickle of blood. We're done, Derek. Don't ever contact me again. Without waiting for his response, I stormed out, slamming the door behind me with such force that a ceramic vase toppled off the wall and smashed on the hardwood floors. Out in the hallway, I leaned against the wall, hugging myself tightly as anguished sobs racked my body. How could they have done this to me? The two people I trusted most in this world engaged in a twisted game of deceit and passion right under my nose. As the tears streamed down my cheeks, a cold clarity washed over me. If it was vengeance Clara and Derek wanted, I would make sure they paid dearly for their betrayal. An eye for an eye. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I typed out a search. How to catch a cheating partner. Sleep eluded me that night, the image of Clara and Derek's twisted betrayal searing my mind. My chest felt hollow, weighed down by a suffocating mix of anger, hurt, and humiliation. With phone in hand, I spent hours scouring the internet for advice on dealing with infidelity. Most sites emphasized taking the high road or seeking counseling. Screw that. Those paths led to forgiveness, and I sure as hell didn't feel like being the bigger person. In a burst of catharsis, I launched a social media campaign to air out Clara's dirty laundry to our wider friend circle. Her perfectly curated Instagram feed portraying an upstanding life stood in stark contrast to the truth I now knew. The woman you think is such a great friend has been sleeping with my fiancé for months behind my back, I wrote, sharing a tastefully blurred photo of Clara draped over Derek on my living room couch. So much for sisters before misters, right? My phone exploded with reactions from our shocked mutual friends demanding explanations. I replied with copious screenshots of incriminating texts between Clara and Derek, putting their sordid trysts on full display. It felt unbelievably liberating to pull back the curtain on their lies. When Clara inevitably tried calling, I blocked her number with zero hesitation. Let her pathetic pleas go unanswered. Over the next few days, the fallout only intensified. Clara got suspended from her nonprofit job pending an investigation into conduct violations. I smiled with immense satisfaction, her carefully manufactured image of a model citizen shattered into a million pieces. A week after that nightmare evening, Derek showed up unannounced at my apartment, his expression haggard. You've gone too far with this, Lila, he said, barely containing his anger. Clara's world is imploding because of your little revenge stunt. I met his glare with steely defiance. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Maybe you both should have thought about the consequences before betraying me. You're acting completely unhinged. He grabbed my shoulders forcefully. We made a mistake, but this insane quest for payback needs to stop. Unflinching, I spat directly in his face, causing him to violently release me and recoil in shock. You're lucky all I've done is expose your lies online, you disloyal prick. I'm just getting started. I wiped my mouth defiantly. If you thought the taste of my betrayal was bad, just wait until you get a taste of my revenge. With that parting shot, I slammed the door in his stunned face, not allowing him another word. My mind raced with possibilities for dragging Clara and Derek's lives through the mud even further. I'd been cheated, lied to, and made a fool of by those closest to me. But I wasn't the meek, wounded party anymore. I was the instigator, the avenger, the awakened force they should have never crossed. My vendetta against Clara and Derek quickly became all-consuming. Each waking moment was dedicated to finding new ways to make their lives miserable, a twisted game that I began to relish with perverse delight. At work, I stumbled across an unexpected ally of sorts. Evan Rhodes, a new marketing hire fresh out of college, innocently asked about my super-intense resting face one afternoon as we worked side by side on a client pitch. Not really any of your business, I snapped, harsher than intended. To his credit, Evan didn't flinch. Hey, we're all human. Whatever's eating at you, it might help to talk it out, he said with an easygoing shrug. Bottling stuff up never does anyone any good. I eyed him warily, searching for any patronizing undertones. But Evan just smiled, that warm, disarming smile of his. In a moment of uncharacteristic openness, I found myself unloading the sordid tale of Clara and Derek's deception. As betrayed tears streamed down my cheeks, Evan reached over and gave my forearm a supportive squeeze. What they did is unforgivable, he said, mouth set in a hard line. You've got every right to be royally pissed. At his words, a dam burst open inside me. Convulsive sobs racked my body as the raw, debilitating pain of the last few weeks came pouring out. Evan just sat there, holding that compassionate space for me to emote. When the tide of sadness finally ebbed, I sniffed hard and wiped my mascara-stained cheeks. Crying about it won't fix anything, though. Those two snakes need to pay. To my surprise, Evan simply nodded in solemn agreement. Don't let people walk all over you, Lila. They betrayed your trust in both the most unforgivable way. You'd be a doormat not to fight back. His validation ignited a fresh wave of vengeful determination. Here was a virtual stranger giving me the green light for retaliation, no lectures about forgiveness or moving on. Over the following days, Evan and I began spending more time together over coffee breaks and late nights at the office. He seemed endlessly fascinated by my scheming, offering creative ideas for getting under Clara and Derek's skin. You should start a burner account and slide into Derek's DMs as some hot model, he suggested one evening as we split a greasy pizza. String him along for a few weeks, then send his boss screenshots of the thirsty messages. My face broke into a devilish grin. You're an evil genius, Evan Rhodes. Let's see how Derek likes being the cheated on one for once. He grinned back at me. Just doing my part to serve up some long overdue karma. With Evan now my co-conspirator, tormenting Clara and Derek quickly escalated from mere social media posturing to much more devious antics. Obscene photos of Derek were mailed to his elderly parents. We created a fake Tinder profile in Clara's name to bait naive men into embarrassing encounters. With each new con, each rattled response from my victims, I felt more vindicated, more powerful. Finally, they were the ones being stripped of dignity and forced to grovel. And Evan was there through it all, that familiar gleam of excitement in his eyes as we traded stories of the latest fiery blowback from Clara and Derek. My unlikely accomplice and I were quickly becoming addicted to extracting vengeance by any means necessary. With Evan by my side fueling my vindictive fire, my campaign against Clara and Derek kicked into high gear. No longer content with social media humiliation, I knew I needed to up the ante. Leaning on my marketing expertise, I launched a silent assault on Clara's professional life. Crafting an anonymous burner email account, I fired off a message to her nonprofit employer's board, detailing salacious rumors of her unethical conduct. It's come to my attention that Clara Wilson has been engaging in an extramarital affair with a subordinate coworker, I typed with a satisfied smirk. As a supposed moral authority figure at your organization, these indiscretions should be investigated immediately. Within 48 hours, I received a reply stating that the matter would be looked into thoroughly by the HR department. Phase 1, complete. As for Derek, I executed Evan's Machiavellian plan of catfishing him to perfection. Using acting headshots pilfered from the internet, I created the persona of Sabrina, a smoke show model who had just moved to the city. "Hey there, handsome," I messaged Derek from a burner account late one night. "A friend showed me your picture, and I simply had to introduce myself." Like hungry sharks to blood in the water, Derek immediately took the bait, firing back a barrage of pathetic, flirtatious texts. I made sure to keep my responses just flirty enough to string him along. "Oh wow, you're gorgeous," he wrote at one point with a suggestive wink emoji. "We should grab drinks sometime and get to know each other better." I cringed in disgust at his transparent desperation. Men were such weak, simple creatures. Several weeks into our cat-and-mouse game, after ensuring I had more than enough incriminating evidence, I finally made my power move. "You know what, Derek? As hot as you are, I just can't keep hiding this from my conscience any longer." I followed that opening line by forwarding him the entire sordid conversation thread we'd been having, punctuated with enlarged photos of my alter ego, revealing her to clearly be an old headshot model, not a real person. "You're disgusting," I brazenly added from my real account before blocking his number. "Enjoy having your cherished integrity questioned even further." But I wasn't done. With a few deft keystrokes, I blasted the receipts of Derek's infidelity to his company's ownership team and external client base, ensuring maximum damage. Over celebratory beers that night, Evan could barely contain his admiration. "You're one cold, brilliant strategist, you know that?" There was a gleam of something deeper in his eyes that made me shiver. Was it desire? Respect? Fear? I leaned back in the booth, savoring a long sip of my icy drink as I reveled in my sweet retribution. "That was just a taste," I replied coolly. "The real payback is still to come." For the first time since being blindsided by my former lover's betrayal, I felt utterly invigorated, brimming with vindictive purpose. My control over Clara and Derek's rapidly deteriorating lives ignited a perverse sense of power. Make no mistake, I wouldn't stop until they understood the true depths of my wrath. They deserved to suffer tenfold for the anguish they'd put me through. Little did I know the worst was still on the horizon. All my meticulous plotting had simply lit the fuse on a dynamite keg of consequences that would soon blow my world apart. With each passing day, I savored Clara and Derek's misery like a fine vintage wine. Watching their lives crumble from afar was intoxicating, my ultimate high. Text messages flooded in from mutual friends seeking explanations for the torrent of scandalous rumors circulating about the despicable duo. Clara desperately attempted to salvage what little credibility she had left with flowery statements denying the allegations as vicious lies. Derek stayed eerily silent, no doubt mortified by my exhibition of his adulterous thirst for Sabrina. All the while, Evan remained my partner in crime, ferociously egging me on with twisted glee. "You've got to deliver the knockout punch," he urged one evening as we conspired over cocktails at a dingy bar. "Bury those snakes once and for all." Evan's dark eyes danced with manic intensity. In that dimly lit booth, I saw the reflection of my own torment mirrored back at me. We were two souls equally scorned, reveling in the sadistic high of revenge. My mind raced with deliciously devious scenarios as I drained my martini glass. Suddenly, the perfect opportunity presented itself. "Jackie's engagement party," I said slowly with a wicked smile. "It's in 2 weeks. Every douchebag from our friend group will be there, including the snakes." Evan instantly grasped my implication, mirroring my sinister grin. "You're going to take them down in front of everybody." I gave a resolute nod, determination blazing in my eyes. It'll be the final nail in their wretched reputations. In the days leading up to the fateful event, I carefully accumulated every drop of proof documenting Derek's ugly betrayal, incriminating texts, video recordings, medical records detailing the depths of their depravity. No trail would be left uncovered, no sin unexposed. The night of the party arrived with a deceptive spring breeze. I strode into the private dining room, oozing confidence, feeling every bit the femme fatale in my fitted crimson dress. After working the room with small talk for a bit, I caught Derek's furtive gaze burning into me from across the room. His expression was one of unmistakable dread. Clara stood at his side, teetering on precariously high heels as she clutched a glass of white wine like a lifeline. Despite her heavy makeup, dark circles were etched beneath her vacant eyes, proof of many restless nights. "You two look like you've seen a ghost," I purred as I strutted up to them, Evan shadowing me with a Cheshire grin. Jackie, the beaming bride-to-be, hovered uncomfortably nearby as bewildered guests began turning our way. Derek swallowed hard, the motion accentuating his bobbing Adam's apple. "Lila, please, not here." "Shut your lying mouth," I interrupted sharply. "The two of you snakes have had this karmic reckoning coming from the moment you betrayed me." Rummaging through my purse, I produced a sleek iPad with shaking hands. Every salacious scrap of evidence illuminated the screen in vivid detail. Caught in the harsh glare, their faces paled to an ashen white. For those with the stomach to witness true depravity, allow me to expose these frauds for who they really are. As Clara emitted a strangled cry of protest, I launched into a revealing production worthy of a TED Talk, complete with projected video clips of their most compromising moments. Jaws dropped in stunned silence, while grotesque secrets filled the air like a noxious gas. By the time my exhibition had concluded, half the room looked physically ill, while others struggled not to laugh outright at the shattered reputations before them. Derek and Clara stood frozen in mortified shock, eyes glistening with tears of shame. I smirked in sick satisfaction at this, their careers and public standing eviscerated before everybody. "That's what you both get for messing with a woman scorned," I growled. "The only snakes left now are the two of you pieces of filth." As a palpable hush blanketed the gathering, I turned on my heel and strode out to raucous applause from Evan, the piercing ring of his mocking laughter echoing in my ears. Finally, after weeks of meticulous plotting, the betrayers had faced their ultimate reckoning. Justice was mine. In the aftermath of the engagement party meltdown, a deafening silence engulfed my world. Riding that glorious high of retribution, I expected to bask in the glory of Clara and Derek's undoing. Instead, an eerie void consumed me. Days ticked by in vacant solitude as the shockwaves rippled outward. Our entire circle of friends had fractured like fine china hitting a tile floor. Nobody seemed eager to pick sides in the carnage, self-preservation kicking into overdrive. Clara went into full bunker mentality, bombarding me with countless voicemails pleading for understanding before I blocked her on everything. The desperation in her warbling voice was sickening. She was nothing more than a deceitful narcissist, trying to slither her way back into victim status. Several nights after the party, an unexpected visitor arrived at my doorstep, Derek. His eyes were red and puffy, suit disheveled like he'd slept in it. Clearing my throat, I gestured for him to enter, with as much dispassion as I could muster. "I deserved that public shaming," he croaked without preamble, voice cracking with emotion. "You're right, Clara and we're horrible people who betrayed your trust in the worst possible way." For a fleeting moment, I almost felt a pang of pity watching him crumble. But the memory of that fateful night, discovering their indiscretion, instantly hardened me. "You're damn right you deserved it," I shot back coldly. "What did you expect to happen after cuckolding me so callously? You brought this karmic hell onto yourself." Derek dragged a shaky hand down his stubbled face, the image of a broken man. "I don't expect forgiveness. Not after what I've put you through. I had to see you and understand why it all went so wrong between us." I bristled at his audacity, twisting the narrative, scornful laughter bubbling up. "Nothing went wrong, except your glaring lack of morals and decency. You think sleeping with my best friend was some cry for help in our relationship? Unbelievable." I know, he mumbled, shoulders slumping in defeat. "I took the coward's way out. Clara I don't know. She showed me attention I falsely convinced myself I was missing from you." With that, something inside me finally snapped. "You can drop the self-loathing pity act now," I snarled, taking purposeful steps toward him. "We both know the real truth. You let your little man parts do the thinking instead of your brain." Derek recoiled as I jabbed a finger into his chest, jaw clenched tightly. "You're pathetic, just another selfish horndog who didn't have the maturity to embrace commitment. I wasted 4 years of my life on your lying, cheating soul." Locking eyes, we stood frozen in that charged moment as the last walls came crumbling down. For Derek, it was the finality of my scathing condemnation. For me, a long-overdue purging of repressed trauma. In his eyes, I glimpsed the shattering of his ego, the desperate need for any scrap of forgiveness or solace. But I was fresh out of mercy to give. "Get out," I uttered with quiet menace, backing away with revulsion etched on my face. "And this time, stay out of my life for good." Derek opened his mouth to protest, but clearly thought better of it. With one last mournful glance my way, he turned and trudged out, leaving me alone with the echoes of our ruined future. I sank onto the couch, finally allowing the dam of emotion to break. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I shook with convulsive sobs, mourning the loss of the life I'd been so cruelly robbed of. But with that shattering catharsis came another powerful realization. My ultimate revenge against Derek and Clara still wasn't complete. Not until their professional lives were vaporized beyond repair. With renewed purpose, I grabbed my laptop and began meticulously documenting every sordid detail of their sickening dalliance. Their transgressions would be immortalized for the world to discover, a permanent stain on their reputations that could never be expunged. Their misery had only just begun. In the weeks following Derek's desperate visit, the shockwaves of my vengeful rampage began settling like a thick cloud of fallout across the city. Boundaries were irrevocably obliterated, loyalties shattered beyond repair. Clara weathered the initial storm, somehow managing to cling to her nonprofit job despite a tidal wave of damning evidence exposing her tawdry indiscretions. Her stint on administrative leave was merely a slap on the wrist, an injustice that made my blood boil. Meanwhile, Derek languished in professional purgatory after his abrupt ousting. Turns out sleeping with your engaged marketing manager's best friend tends to raise some ethical red flags with employers. You'd think screwing over their most valuable team member would merit harsher consequences, Evan mused with disgust one evening over a shared bottle of Cabernet. We'd grown inseparable since that explosive engagement party, united in our scornful distaste for Clara and Derek's continued existence. Our after-work meetups had evolved into airing intricate fantasies of rubbing their moral turpitude in everyone's faces until they had nowhere left to hide. "That's why I've already got the next phase mapped out," I replied with a conspiratorial grin. Retrieving my laptop, I unloaded a barrage of incriminating text exchanges and video confessionals I'd curated from our illicit affair, an unimpeachable digital record of their mutual betrayal in excruciating detail. Evan's eyes widened with macabre delight, studying the grotesque documentation with rapturous approval. "You twisted genius. No jury in the world could acquit them after being presented this." Leaning in, our faces mere inches apart, he growled in a low rasp, "Let's burn it all down and salt the goddamn earth." Against my better judgment, I felt a primal fluttering in my lower abdomen, hearing that deliciously dark promise rumbling from his lips. A spark had been lit inside me, fusing vengeance with an insatiable new hunger I dared not name. Rather than recoiling like any sane person, I held Evan's smoldering gaze with shameless boldness. "I'm going scorched earth on those treacherous scumsuckers. Nobody's soul will be left intact." Our mouths moved in frantic unison, hungrily colliding as all boundaries dissolved into unleashed desire. I tugged Evan on top of me, our impassioned grinding intensifying with each fevered exchange. In that heated blur of entwined bodies and questing hands, I finally allowed myself to surrender, boldly embracing the exhilarating power of revenge. Sprawled beneath Evan afterward, I traced the contours of his chiseled jawline with delicate fingers as he nuzzled into my neck. "We should celebrate once their atrocities are on full display for the world," he purred against my slicked skin. "Maybe over champagne at the Met Opera? I'll wear my tuxedo just for you." Smiling wickedly, I tightened my grip on Evan's muscular frame as visions of high society ruin danced in my head. Sounds like the perfect stage for their undoing. We'll be the Bonnie and Clyde of karmic retribution, drinking in their tears of devastation. And just like that, my path was clear. Clara and Derek deserved no peace, no redemption for their vile transgressions. Like baying hounds on the scent, Evan and I would pursue them to the ends of the earth if needed, tearing away every last vestige of their humanity until only scorched earth remained. Soon they would understand the true depths of what I'd endured. Soon, vengeance would be ours for the taking. With Evan now my partner in vindictive zeal, Clara and Derek's destruction became an all-consuming obsession. We stabbed and slashed at their shattered reputations with relentless fervor, dismantling every shred of dignity until they were but hollow shells of who they once were. First, the digital arsenal of proof detailing their sordid affair went viral after some surgical social media seeding. Explicit text exchanges, hotel receipts confirming their depraved liaisons, even pictures. Nothing was left to the imagination. Within days, the seismic fallout detonated across their professional circles like a thermonuclear warhead. Emails and formal letters of reprimand flooded in from clients, industry peers, and anyone else with a shred of ethical principle. Workplaces were forced to sever ties, else risk being branded as co-conspirators, shielding such grotesque moral turpitude. They're finally being held accountable. Evan grinned wickedly as a steady stream of news alerts pinged our phones. I mirrored his sadistic smile, taking a long sip of celebratory champagne. The depths of their depravity are on full display for all to bear witness. Even in their most desperate moments of regret, Clara and Derek found no mercy from me. Not after shattering all trust so catastrophically. My own self-preservation demanded they be obliterated beyond repair, buried under an avalanche of their own making. As the weeks dragged on in bitter silence, the consequences of their actions continued mounting. Clara's resignation from the nonprofit sector amid vociferous protests of her unbecoming conduct. Derek's former marketing agency preemptively terminating his contract with no possibility of rehire. Their reputations, professionally and personally, became radioactive in the eyes of everyone who mattered. Nobody wished to be caught carrying water for such debased societal pariahs. The righteous anger of a woman scorned proved unstoppable. Only when they had been leveled to the same humiliating lows I had endured would I finally allow myself to feel some semblance of closure from this harrowing odyssey. That long overdue moment of catharsis arrived the night Evan and I attended the gala season opening at the Metropolitan Opera. Resplendent in a shimmering emerald gown, I clutched his arm tightly as we navigated the red carpet flashes and descended the grand staircase. At one point, I caught sight of Clara standing off to the side with some former circle acquaintances, now looking as hollow and ashen as the marble statues looming above her. Our eyes locked for the briefest moment, hers awash in pleading regret. But I simply tossed my head back and laughed raucously in her disgraced face before allowing Evan to whisk me away. Over a sumptuous dinner of caviar and champagne in the opera house's private balcony seating, I surveyed the opulent surroundings with profound contentment. Evan beamed at me from across the table, his eyes gleaming with adoration. "You did it, Lila," he murmured reverently. "You survived their betrayal and emerged victorious. They'll never recover from the ashes you left them in." Reaching across the crisp linen, I enfolded his hand in mine and smiled radiantly. "No, Evan. We did this together. You gave me the courage and strength to fight back ruthlessly." Caressing his chiseled jawline, I drank in every inch of his rapt features. "You helped me embrace the truth that the only way to defeat monsters is to be an even bigger monster." Leaning in until our lips were barely grazing, I breathed, "And now, we get to decide what comes next for us." As thunderous applause echoed through the opera hall, signaling the grand performance's start, Evan pulled me into a fiery, all-consuming kiss. In that searing moment, I knew we had both been irreversibly transformed, tempered in the fires of vengeance like blades emerging from the forge. When our lips finally parted, my eyes glinted with the harsh determination of a new dawn rising. "They'll spend their lives drowning in shame and regret," I hissed against Evan's mouth. "But for us, this is just the beginning."